Can we start?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ANENT webinar series number 9, which is related to the Fukushima accident and lesson learned by Japan from this accident. Today, we have two special guest speakers. The first one is Mr. Professor Akira Kawano from International Atomic Energy Agency. And the next one is, sorry, to spell. Yes, a junior associate professor in Mr. Takumi Yamaguchi.
Yamaguchi, yeah, Mr. Takumi
Sorry for
Yamaguchi.
my pronunciation.
No worries.
From Tokyo Medical University. So I would like to invite Professor Kawano to start his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Iser. So Maruyama-san, please show up my presentation slides, please.
So Professor Akira Kawano, who is the user. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maruyama-san. So my name is Akira Kawano. I'm working for the Nuclear Power Engineering section of the IAEA. So please, next slide, please. Okay. Yes, I have been working for the IAEA since November 2018, about mostly 6 years here. Before that, I had been working for TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Companies, in Japan. My experience is half at the nuclear power station and half at the headquarters, and some experience in abroad. My experience is fortunately it's a wide range, starting from the pre-operations and engineering works, design works for the advanced boiling water reactor. And after that, I go into the plant operation and the management world, especially for the maintenance and maintenance planning. And finally, I was in charge of the nuclear safety management and oversight as a general manager at the headquarters. My background is electric engineering. Next, please. Yes, today I will talk about the facts and lessons of Fukushima nuclear accidents. So part one, I talked about how earthquake tsunami struck the site and how we lost the supply, power supply, how accident progressed and how we responded. And part two, I talked about physical countermeasures a little bit and also the lessons learned from the viewpoint of the organizational and culture. So next, please. How earthquake and tsunami struck Fukushima site. Next, please. Yes, we had two nuclear power stations in Fukushima Prefecture. The oldest one is Fukushima Daiichi, we call 1F site with 6 units. And the other one is Fukushima Daini, we call 2F site with 4 plants. Both are facing Pacific Ocean and located about 250 kilometers north of Tokyo. And both sites have a distance about 12 kilometers with each other. Next, please. This is a lineup of the plants for both sites. And as you can see here, the 1F site plant lineup is a little bit complicated. It has 3 types of the plant, BW3, 4, and 5. And so especially for the first kind of the plant, unit 1, 2, and 6 were manufactured by American manufacturer GE, General Electric. And the contract was a turnkey contract, so-called. So it's like we start to drive our car by having the key. So just please please drive our car. So we are not so much deeply involved in the basic design and basic layout of the plants before the construction, and even during the construction. That was a little bit problem, and I will talk about it later. So 3 plants were in operation when the accident happened, unit 1 through 3, and the other 3 were under the outage. On the other hand, the 2F site, 4 plants are all manufactured by the domestic manufacturers like Toshiba and Hitachi. And we are very deeply involved in the basic design discussions and also the layout discussions. It's very different from the 1F site case. Next, please. Yes, the earthquake we had was very big. So magnitude 9.0, one of the largest tsunami came after 50 minutes after the earthquake. But after just the earthquake, all units automatically tripped by insertion of the control rod. It was very successful. We stopped the reaction between the neutron and the nuclear fuel very successfully. But the story was completely changed after having the tsunami. Next, please. So this is the flooded part of the 1F site. The blue part is a flooded part. So oceanside area where we had very important safety-related seawater pump motors, or the height was about 4 meters above the ocean. So all these areas are flooded and damaged. And the plant building area, the turbine building is directly facing to the ocean, and behind the turbine building, we had the reactor buildings. So that area for the unit 1 through 4 is elevation was 10 meters above the ocean, and the unit 5 and 6 is 13 meters. This difference of the 3 meters made the story very different. I will talk to you later. And anyway, the estimated tsunami height on average was 30 meters. Of course, the highest part, land-up height, was 15 or 16. But anyway, it's very much greater than the design basis of 6.1 meters. So we could not expect such a big tsunami before the accident. Next, please. So this is the photos, and the upper 3 photos were taken in the southern area of the 1F site. And the tsunami usually come and go away very soon, mostly like 1 minute. So you see the 5.5 meter height of the tank, the left-hand side photo. So it immediately flooded, and tsunami went away so soon. Lower side is the photos were taken in the northern part of site, and you can see the seawall. It's a 10-meter height, and the tsunami came over that. And the big tank you can see with the oils and waters are flown over with a lot of cars. Tsunami force is huge. Next, please. Due to the earthquake, road was completely damaged, as you can see the right-hand photo, and by tsunami, the big tank was flung over more than 100 meters and disturbed the transportation on the road. The left lower picture is taken after the hydrogen explosion of the unit 1. So before that, we laid down the cables and hoses to supply the power and also the water for the cooling of the reactors. And we also brought fire engines from the outside for that. But all of these are completely damaged by the hydrogen explosion, and we started to restore from the beginning. But we had a lot of aftershocks, repeated aftershocks and tsunami alarm. It was very difficult work for us. Next, please. This is the inside of the building, and especially in the main control room. Right-hand side, deputy shift supervisor is sitting on his desk and try to confirm the plant status with very special clothes and full face masks. Once we understand the radiation was going up so quickly, and we started to wear this special clothes and full face mask, which were very stressful. And left-hand side, the operators are trying to understand the plant parameters by measuring the voltage. We lost the DC power also, and instrumentation was not available. So that's a reason why we brought several batteries into the main control room from our own cars. We tried to bring them from the warehouse, but warehouse was also flooded, and that's the reason why we brought them from our own car. It's a kind of innovative way, and created 120 volt for the instrumentation and try to understand the plant status. It was Friday afternoon. So we had 700 people only for the typical people, and food, water was very much limited. And they did not sleep for the first 2-3 days, maybe because of the Japanese spirit, and which is good and bad. And they started to be exhausted, and also felt a lot of fear because of the repeated aftershocks. And the problem was the communication means were not available. So they couldn't understand their families are okay or not. So started to feel also despair. Next, please. So this is the shared meals by typical people. It's very much limited, but we survived with those things. Next, please. This is the gymnasium building located at the hilltop of the 2F site. So we use this building as a basis to respond to the 1F emergency. The center with the back is myself, and we usually stayed here and slept here, and every day visited the 1F site and responded to the accident. This is the next room to the emergency response center of the Fukushima Daiichi site 1F site. And this room was provided for the people who came from the outside. You can see the one fits here in the center. This is me. We are provided such a nice place for sleeping. But all the people need to sleep on the floor during the emergency hours. It was really difficult time. So please next. 2F site. Yeah, the 2F site also had mostly the same level of the tsunami. Direction was from the southeast, and the tsunami ran up along the road next to the unit 1. You see the right-hand side, the full amount of the water, seawater, and also a little bit small, but you can see the smoke coming up from the reactor building. It's a smoke from the diesel generators, which was successfully started up after the earthquake. But after having this amount of the water, the DZ was forced to be shut down because this water came into the reactor building annex through the louver, and diesel generators themselves flooded and damaged, especially for the unit 1. Unit 2, 3, 4, the impact was relatively lighter than the unit 1, but diesel generator need to have the cooling function by the seawater pump motors located at the oceanside area. So they became unavailable because of the flooding. So the most of the diesel generator were also unavailable at the 2F site. Tsunami height on average was 9 meters. Relatively lower than the 1F site, but still much greater than the design basis of the 5.2 meter. Next, please. This is a cross-section figure of the 1F site and the 2F site. As you can see, so we had a very important safety-related seawater pumps at the oceanside area. It's a 4 meter above the ocean, completely flooded and damaged, especially at the 1F site. And the 1F site, emergency diesel generators and associated power panels and important pumps of the makeup water pump were located at the basement floor of the turbine building, which was directly facing to the ocean. So they are all flooded and damaged. Water came through the louver, entrance door, and the hatches. They are not watertight, so all flooded and damaged. On the other hand, the 2F site, the seawater pump at the oceanside area was accommodated in the seawater heat exchanger building, but yeah, relatively better, but door hatch didn't work well, so most of them are also flooded and damaged. But good thing for the 2F site, but emergency diesel generator and the associated power panel were located in the annex building of the reactor building. Reactor building is farther from the ocean than the turbine building, and some of them survived regardless of the high tsunami, except unit 1. So that's the difference of the 1F and the 2F. Next, please. We had a lot of aftershocks. Even just on March 11th, we had 155 times aftershocks, bigger than the magnitude 5.0. So repeatedly, the aftershocks came and with tsunami alarms. So people, responders, need to evacuate once they had tsunami alarms, and then came back and restarted the works. It's a very difficult time. Next, please. So TEPCO needed to respond to the totally 10 plants for the 2 sites. It was really difficult. Just for 1 plant problem, usually it's very tough, but we needed to respond to 10 plants. Even just 1 website, we responded to the 6 plants, and our command and control system was not well organized, and all the decision making was concentrated on the 1 person. It's the head of the site. We call superintendent. So he was really exhausted with decision making and the communication through the TV conference with the headquarters. So of course, we improved that system after the accident. Next, please. I started to talk about how we lost the power supply. Next, please. This is the slide showing the before earthquake for the unit 1 through 4. As I have already told you, the unit 1 through 3 are in operation and producing the electricity and transmitted to the Tokyo metropolitan area through the substations located very close to the site, 10 kilometers away from this site. And that's unit 4, the left-hand side, and received, because that plant was under the outage, so they received the power supply, off-site power from the substation for their maintenance work. Next, please. So this is the situation after the tsunami, but I need to start to talk after earthquake, before tsunami. because of the earthquake, we lost all the offsite power supply from the substation for the unit 1 through 4. But fortunately, all the diesel generators were successfully started up and continuously supply the AC power. But after tsunami attack, all the DZ functions were lost for several reasons. Basically, these generators were located at the basement floor of the turbine themselves. These themselves were flooded and damaged, but also they need to have the seawater cooling function provided from the seawater pump motors located at the oceanside area. Those pumps are all flooded and damaged, so they lost the cooling function. And DZ function were lost. But we had a little bit smaller, but you see the 2B and 4B diesel generators. These two diesel generators were not original design. Additionally, installed in 90s to improve the reliability of the emergency power supply. These two are not seawater pump cooled. These two were air-cooled diesel generators and located in the independent building on the mountainside, far from the ocean. So these two diesel generators actually themselves survived regardless of the tsunami. But unfortunately, associated power panels, you can see maybe 2E and 4E were located at the basement floor that independent building. So they are flooded and damaged. That's a reason why DZ lost their function. Anyway, totally lost after the tsunami. Next, please. Unit 5 and 6. So this is a before earthquake, and these two plants were under outage and receiving offsite power supply for their maintenance work before the earthquake. Next, please. After the earthquake, as I show you the photo later, the one transmission tower fell down, not because of their weak resistance, but because of the landslide, which happened very close to the transmission line. Anyway, after the earthquake, they lost offsite power. But in the same way as Unit 1 through 4, all the diesel generators were started up very successfully. But after the tsunami attack, most of the diesel generator function was lost. But only diesel generator 6B, you can see in green color, survived. This was also not original design. In the same way as 2B and 4B, this was additionally installed to improve the reliability of the emergency power supply and also air-cooled and located in the independent building. So it survived with associated power panels, which were also located in the reactor building, not the turbine building. That saved Unit 6. Unit 6 were not in operation, but in outage time, but still have the heat from the fuels to be cooled continuously. So DZ 6B helped that function. And also the Unit 5 next to the Unit 6. Please, next slide. So we, by hand, connected the cable to the necessary pump motors of the Unit 5 from the Unit 6 power panels and used that AC power from the diesel generator 6B. Unit 5 was also saved. This is not often talked about, but this is a kind of a success story at the WIFE site. They made a good efforts. Next, please. This is the photos on the lower side. It's photos from the substations. So it's a very old style of the power substations, and you see the circuit breaker and the disconnector and fell down or the damaged because of the earthquake. Its insulation relies on the distance and the porcelain, so it's relatively weak compared with the recent system using the SF6 gas for the insulations. Upper side photos, so the transmission tower fell down because of the landslide, which happened very close to the tower. So that's a reason why units 5 and 6 lost the offsite power supply. So next, please. This is a configuration of the 2F site. 2F site had a very good luck, very lucky. So because you see the 500 kV, two 500 kV circuits transmission line and the 266 kilovolt transmission line. One 500 kilovolt transmission line survived, just luckily. So 2F site continuously could receive the offsite power from the substations. But also, I'd like you to note that we had HS transformer. You see the between the 500 kV line and the 66 kilovolt line. It's a step-down transformer. It was also not our original design. It was installed in 90s to enhance the resistance against the reliability against the lightnings. We had many lightnings at the time, and 66 kilovolt transmission line was always affected and damaged, and we lost the offsite power through the 66 kilovolt. These four lines are on the same transmission tower. 66 kilovolt line is a lower, and the upper side is a 500 kV circuit line. Lightnings always attack the weakest part, so always 66 kilovolt circuit line was affected. But after installing this HS transformer, step-down transformer, we could continuously receive the offsite power through the 500 kV line. But we didn't expect this could work against the accident. But actually, it worked very well, fortunately. So we continuously received at the 2F site the AC power. So next, please. So the difference between 1F site and the 2F site, tsunami height was 4-meter difference. It's a big difference. Offsite power, all lost at the 1F site. One survived for the 2F site. It's also a big difference. Only one diesel generator survived at the 1F site. A couple of diesel generators were available at the 2F site. Metal-clad switchgear, it's an associated power panel I mentioned, mostly flooded and damaged at the 1F site. Mostly survived at the 2F site. Battery provides the DC power to understand the plant parameters like water level, pressure, and radiation level. Most of the batteries were flooded and damaged at the 1F site. Most survived at the 2F site. So the operation at the 1F site, it's like driving car blindly. But 2F site, fortunately, always understood the plant status. Next, please. So how accident progressed? Next, please. So let me allow to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of the nuclear physics. So nuclear plants has 3 fundamental nuclear safety functions as described at the bottom part. First one is a stop reaction between the neutron and nuclear fuel. So we kept it successfully, meaning inserted the control rod successfully for all the plants. But we lost the cooling function to remove the residual heat from the fuel. Even after inserting the control rod, still 7% of the heat are remaining. Even after 5 hours, still 1% of the heat is remaining, which is huge heat to be removed continuously. So we failed in cooling the core fuel, and we failed the third function as confining the radioactivities because of the meltdown of the fuel. So that's the basis. Next, please. So this is a configuration of the unit 1. So usually after inserting the control rod, the pressure is still high. So we started from the high pressure injection to the reactor pressure vessel RPV. So this is a IC, it's a passive system, and the HPCI, high pressure core injection system. We lost this function because of the loss of the DC power. And even usually we use a safety relief valve, SRV, you can see. So for depressurization to reduce the pressure of the reactor pressure vessel. We also failed in opening this valve. This is air-driven valves, but needed to have the DC power. We couldn't open the SRV. If we are successfully made a high pressure injection system and depressurization by the safety relief valve, and the pressure is decreased, we finally use a low pressure injection system like a CES, you can see, CCS, and also MUWC, even DDFP. But all these didn't work because of the loss of the AC powers and for other reasons for the DDFP, so technical trouble. So we lost all the functions. That's the reason why we brought the fire engines and started to use the seawater for the cooling of the reactor. Next, please. 2F site. As I explained to you, we continuously had an AC power supply from the outside, but that power needed to be transmitted to the necessary pump motors located at the oceanside area. So needed to connect the cable to them. It's a long way. Needed to lay down the cable, totally 9 kilometers. It's a huge length, but it's difficult for you to imagine, but the cable is very heavy. Usually it took 1 month to lay down the 9-kilometer cable, but we made it just one night by dispatching the 200 people to the field. At first, it's difficult to decide how to lay down, which route should be used. So we selected the route, but as you see here, at the light blue line, it's the route we used for the cable laying down. But you remember, this route was full of water. You remember the photo of the tsunami at first and came and ran up this road. So it was very difficult to make a decision for the top management at the 2F site to make decision to dispatch people there. Tsunami could come again. So in that case, people will die. So they carefully analyzed the pattern of the earthquake and the tsunami, and finally decided to dispatch the people there in the darkness around the midnight. So they started to work. Fortunately, tsunami didn't come, and they successfully laid down the cable just one night. and also necessary to replace the pump motors which were flooded and damaged. So corporate headquarters collaborated with the site very well. The replaced pump motors were brought by helicopter by support of the self-defense force of Japan. It was brought from the Toshiba factory and also the other site, Kashiwazaki Kariwa. So they made it. Please next. So the 2F site was relatively better than the 1F site, but they managed it very well. Their strategy worked very well, and prompt restoration of the emergency procurement. So by support of the headquarters worked very well, and the logistics and emotional care was made for the people by non-engineer people. That was also important aspect. And the organizational integrity was maintained during the crisis. If I have the time, I need to talk more, but so today I stop here. And next, please, move to the countermeasures. So next, please. So this is the photo from the Kashiwazaki Kariwa site. It's located, it's a newest site with 7 plants and still have the possibility to restart the plant. And located at the completely opposite side of the Pacific Ocean side. And there we made a lot of countermeasures. At first, against tsunami. As you can see, the big sea walls are very expensive. And the tidal board and the tidal wall in front of the reactor building. And inside, the watertight doors for the important equipment rooms. And also we made a waterproof treatment for the pipings and the cable trays. Next, please. We also installed the additional equipment and for the cooling and power supply. Power supply like gas turbine generator, GTZ, and power supply vehicle located at the high place on the hill. And also the for the cooling water, the fire engines also the high place. And the pond, you can see the light lower side. It's just using the gravity, the water can be supplied to the plant. And we also installed additional battery for the DC power supply at the high elevation in the plant, and also the high pressure water injection system additionally installed at the high pressure in the plant. Next, please. So physical lessons learned. So 3 necessary things. It's a water, power supply, and air. Please remember these 3. For emergency, these 3 are very essential. And you have to consider any possibility of the unexpected hazardous conditions. In any conditions, we need these 3. Especially power supply should be not only redundant, but also diversified. That's important. Diversification is very important. And the layout is also very important. So you should be deeply involved in the layout discussion before construction. If you are the newcomer who will start a nuclear business very soon. Reliability of the offsite power is also important, but usually it's not the scope of the nuclear division. So you have to collaborate with the transmission department and distribution department within the utilities. Next, please. So I would like to finally expand the discussion a little bit further and briefly talk about why the accident happened. This is analyzed negative spiral that caused the accident in TEPCO. So, well, the start was the belief and assumption that the safety has already been established after a certain level of the implementation of countermeasures against severe accident. I'd like you to take a little bit small, but take a look at the left upper side. It's about safety awareness. It was gradually embedded in our organization. We also had an environment that top management recognized the improvement of the nuclear power plant capacity factor should be the most prioritized challenge during the time period after TEPCO scandal in 2002. Maybe you don't know, it's a kind of the falsification of the important maintenance data of the reactor internals. We try to hide it to avoid unnecessary difficult discussions. It was very bad scandal, and top management resigned at the time, and all the plant was forced to be shut down. And also it was 2002, and 5 years later, the Niigata Chuetsu-oki earthquake, big earthquake, directly attacked the Kashiwazaki Kariwa site in 2007. This also forced all the plant shutdown to implement necessary countermeasures against earthquake. So while our vision, of course, was a safety first, but the safety awareness had actually started to be degraded by focusing on the capacity factors, availability of the plant, in other words. So focus on the improving capacity factor, not on safety enhancement, increased the outsourcing the works for design and modification to the manufacturers like Toshiba and Hitachi, and also field works to the contracts. I started to talk about the right-hand side of this negative spiral because we are afraid that our own small mistakes could cause a plant shutdown. This resulted in the degradation both in engineering and the technical capability, and also created a high-cost structure. It further affected our communication capability with the stakeholders, like the public and local government. Since we lost our confidence in engineering capability, we just needed to continuously state nuclear is safe and perfect. Accident never happens, without any detailed technical discussions with them. So in this figure, you can see some scissors that try to cut these negative spirals, including enhancement of the safety awareness of the top management, establishment of the Nuclear Safety Oversight Office, which is independent from the nuclear division, improvement of the engineering capability to propose defense in-depth safety measures, enhancement of the technical capability of the on-site staff, introduction of the incident command and control system, and establishment of the risk communicators to improve the communication abilities. I believe that those measures should be considered by you as early as possible if you start a nuclear business in future. So that's our background of the accident. Okay, next, please. This is a final slide and a message to you. So at first, I'd like you to expect anything. Don't stop, think about anything. So something unexpected could happen. So I'd like you to much more aware of the risk existing in the nuclear business. It's very different from the other industries. And also, I'd like you to recognize most superior, excellent engineers cannot be perfect enough to cover all the aspects of the safety. So that's a reason why you need to collaborate with other people, other groups, other companies, other industries, and other countries routinely. And need to continuously learn the lessons from any other people to avoid your self-complacency. So most important message is I'd like you to continuously improve your fundamental engineering capabilities and first-hand technical skills. And under the real emergency, you can rely only on these capabilities to respond to the accident. So communication skills are also very important to implement all other things, essential factors, also for the robust safety culture. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your listening. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Professor Akira Kawano from Atomic Energy, International Atomic Energy Agency. It was very informative presentation, and I remember some exciting news in 2011 when the Fukushima accident happened. And I think it is better. I think audience have some questions, but I prefer to have a Q&A session after the next presentation. Okay. So I would like to invite Dr. Takomi Yamaguchi from Medical University of Tokyo to get started his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing me. Okay.
Please introduce yourself in more details.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course. Okay, so I'll start with my presentation. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. My name is Takumi Yamaguchi from Tokyo Medical University. I have titled my talk as Radiation Risk Communication with Fukushima. Okay. First of all, I introduce myself. Ordinarily, I was born in Nagasaki City. Do you know the Nagasaki City? Nagasaki City was the area where the atomic bomb was dropped on August 9, 1945, and I was born and raised within a radius of about 1 kilometer from the location. The picture on the lower left, this picture, is called the peace statue, and it is said that the right hand pointing upward represents the atomic bomb, and the left hand represents peace. And many World Heritage Sites have been recognized in Nagasaki City in recent years. The center photo is an island commonly known as Gunkanjima. Gunkanjima, it is said that the battleship island. Although uninhabited today, the island once prospered as a coal mine. The ruins of the island still remain, and it is registered as a heritage site that supported Japan's Industrial Revolution. The rightmost photo is a church called Ora Tenshido. Japan has a history of separation of Christianity, and Nagasaki City is particularly home to many churches as many people believed in Christianity in hiding, called hidden Christians. I was born and raised in such a city and studied medicine at Nagasaki University, the only school in the world exposed to the atomic bomb. And I have conducted research on radiation, medical sciences, and radiation risk. And in my previous positions, I was engaged in community health at the Nagasaki City Public Health Center, and then in research on radiation medical sciences at the Atomic Bomb Disease Institute at Nagasaki University. Later, I was transferred from Nagasaki University to work at the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. The department I worked in was established after the Fukushima disaster, and was in charge of formulating measures for health management and countermeasures for radiation health concerns after the Fukushima accident. I can say that the experience I gained here has been utilized in the radiation risk communication that I'm still doing today. After that, I moved to Nuclear Safety Research Association, where I worked on nuclear disaster medicine, especially the next step of developing on-site medical care at nuclear power plants in the event of a nuclear disaster in Japan. Also, the medical treatment for nuclear disasters outside of nuclear power plants, so-called off-site, has been gradually taking shape. The response to the situation inside a nuclear power plant is still lagging behind because it is also the site of a single company. It can be said that it is still necessary to create a policy to improve such a situation. So, first of all, I explained about what is risk communication. Okay, I ask question. Please answer down in your head. For example, on X month Y, you look out your window and see no clouds. However, weather forecast reports that clouds will develop in the afternoon with a 60% chance of precipitation. Will you go out with an umbrella? Please thinking about in your head. I'd really like to hear from the audience, but since it is a webinar, I will talk about possible answers. One person might think that I'm going out with an umbrella because of the chance of precipitation. And one person might think that I'm not going out with an umbrella because it's a clear day. What do you think about this? Now, for another question, on next month Y, although thick clouds have spread since morning, the forecast shows a 10% chance of precipitation. Will you go out with an umbrella? Here, as well, I usually ask questions to the audience, but share possible answers. Please think about this question in your head. One person might say they will not carry an umbrella because there is a 10% chance of precipitation, but one person might bring an umbrella judging by the amount of clouds. Interestingly, one person may decide to carry an umbrella when there is a 60% chance of precipitation, but when there is a 10% chance of precipitation, they may decide to carry an umbrella based on the amount of clouds. Of course, conversely, when there is a 60% chance of precipitation, one may look at the weather and make a decision. But when there is a 10% chance of precipitation, one may use the chance of precipitation as a factor in making a decision. Thus, in this case, the risk is that it will rain, but human perception of that risk is not uniform and is based on the circumstances, feeling, and experiences of the moment and not on scientific conditions. So, how does one get into this situation? We talked about this briefly earlier. Knowledge is not equal cognition. No matter how much we know the meaning of precipitation, probability, scientific reasons, people perceive and judge risk in their own way through subjective cognition. That is, I think blah blah blah. Risk is only a science and assessment of safety. On the other hand, risk perception is subjective and an variation of safety. It would be there if things were based on the variation. It is safe, so I feel safe, but there's not how people think. What I have talked about so far has been about risk perception. Each individual's decision to go out with an umbrella in a familiar precipitation probability is different, and often even the reason for that decision is different. I will explain the background and the cause of such risk perception. These slides were provided to me by Professor Jacques Lochel. He is the ex-vice chairperson of International Commission on Radiological Protection. A risk perception is a subjective judgment that people make about the characteristics and the severity of a risk. The study of risk perception associated with technological hazards emerged in the early 70s, stimulated by an article starred in Science to answer the question. The name of the article is How Safe is Safe Enough? Starr used a revealed preference approach, assuming that through a process of trials and errors, society ultimately finds the optimal compromise between risks and benefits associated with any activity. He found a large gap between voluntary and involuntary risks. He also found that people are willing to tolerate higher risks from activities seen as highly beneficial. Moreover, relying on Starr's work, Fischoff and Slavic et al. Developed a series of studies based on questionnaires to ask directly the people concerned about their perception of the risks and the qualitative characteristics of the associated hazards. In other words, the authors looked at explicit preferences. That is how much risk people say that they are willing to accept to produce quantitative measures of perceived risks and benefits. Elaborating on the feelings, Fischoff and Slavic elaborated a theoretical framework known as the psychometric paradigm. In light of the previous background, we have included some points to consider when thinking about risk. The risk refers to the possibility of a disaster, not the disaster itself. Risk is a probabilistic event within the law of large numbers. Overall risk and the individual risk is differ. The calculation of risk involves individual risk, which is based on an individual lifetime, and societal risk, which is based on the harm per population. And zero risk is not possible for any event or technology. It is so important point. Risk does not exist in isolation. It always involves a trade-off with benefits, risk and trade-off. Managing risk comes at a cost, so there is a trade-off between risk and cost. And one risk is a trade-off relationship with other risks. In addition to objective risk, is subjective risk. Subjective risk is also a risk perception. First, let's talk about risk trade-off. Risk is adopted precisely because it is in a trade-off relationship with benefits. For example, for medical exposure, there is a risk trade-off between the risk of exposure and the benefit of confirming their physical condition, a patient's physical condition. And for driving car, there is a risk trade-off between the risk of accident and the benefits of convenience. In addition, there is a cost in terms of time and or money to reduce the risk of increased benefits. And how do people perceive risk in the first place? Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and also he is a psychologist, in his famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow, says that the people's thinking can be divided into System 1 and System 2. System 1 is people perceive risk in a hasty, quick, rough, and intuitive manner, which provides an immediate answer. This perception is unconscious and based on emotions and associations, leading to rapid, automatic, and general variation. System 2 is based on conscious analysis and logic, processing information after gathering the necessary materials for judgment. General public risk calculation and evaluations tend to rely on System 1. On the other hand, experts and researchers primarily use System 2 for their judgment. Furthermore, he said System 1, intuitive thinking, provides quick but rough answers. In contrast, System 2, analytical thinking, is provided slower but more precise answer. So we have looked at the psychological dynamics of risk, but I will unpack how people actually perceive various risks in a paper published in Science by Paul Slovic. I can say that people's risk perception can be represented on two axes: the axis of dread risk and the axis of unknown risk, where dread risk increases and unknown risk increases, or the so-called upper right risk factor is perceived as higher. On the other hand, people perceive the risk factors on the lower left here as low. So this slide is so busy, I'm sorry. But for example, the upper right risk is radio waste, a nuclear reactor accident, nuclear weapon fallout, and so on. A lot of kinds of radiation or nuclear is existing this part. On the other hand, the lower left is bicycle, trampolines, alcohol, and so on. It is said that they are familiar with our life. Radiation and nuclear power are unknown and are perceived as higher risks to begin. This is why risk communication about radiation and nuclear power is so difficult. So, without further preamble, I hope you now know what risk is and how people perceive risk. I will then explain how to put risk communication into practice. First, I'll explain the definition of risk communication. The Nuclear Regulatory Council (NRC) is risk communication as an interactive process used in talking or writing about topics that cause concern about health, safety, security, or the environment. And WHO, World Health Organization, is defined as risk communication. Risk communication is a real-time exchange of information, advice, and opinions between experts or officials and people who face a hazard or threat to their survival, health, or economic or social well-being. Anyway, it is defined as a process of dialogue, co-consideration, and collaboration, and exchange of information about risks that involves the people and institutions involved. Sorry. So as we have mentioned in our paper, risk communication involves several steps. How far do we deliver or not? If we do not take these steps into account, we will not receive any information about risks, and we will end up with a communication failure. The first step is to raise awareness about the problems. Once that condition is met, we can move on to the onto the step of providing and sharing information. I believe that the first step is for those involved to become aware of the problem themselves. For example, this webinar, and to become aware of the problems of disaster prevention and risk communication in your own countries in the wake of the Fukushima disaster. As a result, we can take this one way but informative and sharing steps. However, this step will not reach those who are not interested at all, because there is a big barrier of being aware of and interested in the problem in the first place. The next step is dialogue and consideration. The previous step of providing and sharing information was only one way, but by taking the steps, we acquire some knowledge, and with that information, we can engage in dialogue with experts and related organizations and people involved. We can then think together about the future based on that dialogue. Through this process, the people involved gradually gain trust in the experts and the institutions involved, and this trust can encourage them to change their behavior and reach a consensus. However, in the actual practice of risk communication in Fukushima, it is extremely difficult to change behavior and reach consensus, which may lead to experts imposing their thoughts and opinions. I'd like to repeat here that risk communication is only the process of information exchange, not the imposition of thoughts and feelings. And I explained on the previous slides about the steps and or phase in risk communication, but I will explain what actually needs to be taken care of. I believe that the most important thing in risk communication is narrative. Yes, scientific and the risk information needs to be communicated, and it needs to be accurate. However, scientific information for the general public is perceived as difficult and unacceptable. Information that is difficult to understand is perceived as being imposed, and at that point, risk communication will fail. So this is why narratives are necessary in addition to conveying scientific and accurate information. A narrative that warmly envelops the target audience without pushing them away is important for smooth risk communication. As noted here, 2 points. If only the scientific part is explained, not only will the listeners not be convinced, but they will also judge that this person does not understand anything, and the relationship of trust will not be built. And even if the residents are disturbed by non-scientific matters, it is necessary to convey scientific information while being sensitive to their feeling, but never confirms unscientific information. It is so important thing. If of course, even if the residents are disturbed by non-scientific matter, it is necessary to convey scientific information, but it is so narrative. It is so narrative is important. And other important things to consider are trust and individuality. Who would listen to someone who is not trustworthy in the first place? Without trust as a prerequisite, risk communication cannot take place. This is because communication that begins with the assumption that what this person is saying is a lie will never work. Assumption of trust can be that the person is a researcher at a research institution, or that the institution or person is trusted by the subject. On top of that, we have identified 4 important perspectives. Firstly, do not push scientific information. And the second point is listen to the voice of the subject and understand their feelings. And third point, engage in dialogue with them, respecting their opinions. And the fourth point is think and act together to solve problems together. Furthermore, it is tempting to answer the same question in the same way, but I'm sure that the background of each person's problems and concerns is different to begin with. That's why it is necessary to provide a tailor-made response for each person, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. On top of that, we have identified 2 important perspectives. Firstly, respect each person's life and include them in the narrative. And second point, do not respond to in stereotypical ways. So, the World Health Organization (WHO) also mentions the concepts of community engagement in its report Communicating Risk in Public Health Emergencies. Community engagement means identify people that the community trusts and build relationships with them, involve them in decision making to ensure interventions are collaboratively, contextually appropriate, and that communication is community owned. This means building trust and two-way communication according to the characteristics of the community. And stakeholder-driven communication is so important. So, then the concept of radiation risk communication derived from risk communication is explained. Radiation risk communication is something whose importance was emphasized after the Chernobyl accident in 1986 and the Fukushima accident 2011. Ordinarily, it was implemented for the patients undergoing medical radiation treatment, but it was further enhanced after the nuclear accident. After the Fukushima accident, it was shifted to the context of public health in particular. Furthermore, after the Fukushima accident in 2017, the Japanese government launched a policy called the Strategy to Strengthen Risk Communication to dispel rumors and has been actively practicing risk communication. Even after the Fukushima accident, a gap existed between experts and the public due to lack of risk communication knowledge. So this section describes radiation risk communication to the residents of Fukushima. Radiation risk communication in Fukushima began with the team that conducted risk communication after Chernobyl accident entering Fukushima and conducting it as a dialogue, or with experts from research institutes such as Nagasaki University and the National Institute of Radiological Sciences practicing it, followed by the Ministry of the Environment. That ministry then established the Radiation Risk Communication Consultant Support Center and began training radiation risk communication personnel. The outcome of this implementation is 2 points: improved perception of radiation risk among residents, and increased knowledge and reduced anxiety over time. One topic is, I explain, Typhoon Hagibis, which hit Fukushima in 2019, caused extensive damage, causing an incident in which flexible container bags filled with soil contaminated by radioactive materials were washed away, leaking soil contaminated radioactive materials. The flooding of the river also raised concerns among residents that radioactive materials may have contaminated explanation to the anxious residents. Resuspension and investigation by researchers to ensure that there was no recontamination. And in the past few years, anxiety has become more individualized and complex, so requiring a more personalized approach than ever before. And it is important to build long-term trusting relationships and practice communication is now challenges. This presentation has focused on radiation risk communication within Fukushima Prefecture, but will also cover risk communication for residents who evacuated after the Fukushima accident and are still living outside of Fukushima Prefecture. As of December 2021, about 2,700 people are living outside of Fukushima Prefecture. As 13 years have already passed since the accident, it can be said that the nature of the evacuation has become a migration. For example, children who were 5 years old at the time of the accident are now 18 years old. It is rather the psychology of young people to think that life in the city is better if they live in the city center, because they have been living in the evacuation area for longer periods of time. It will be difficult for them to return to Fukushima and look for a new job when their parents' generation has also started working at the evacuation site and their jobs have already been established. That is why we believe it more natural to think that the evacuation is already over. However, there are some people who are thinking of returning to Fukushima at the evacuation site but cannot return for various reasons. For example, there are those who cannot return because the house they lived in at the time is still in the difficult to return zone. Those who believe that Fukushima is affected by radiation and that they will get sick if they return, and those who are afraid that they will become lonely and isolated because there's no one nearby if they return to Fukushima. There are people who want to return but cannot for various reasons. In this context, I believe that dispelling misperceptions about the situation in Fukushima, especially about the health effects of radiation, is of utmost importance. And to this end, we have been conducting radiation risk communication to evacuees. So this slide describes our thoughts on and the response to evacuees outside of Fukushima Prefecture. I believe these 5 points listed on the slides are the most important perspectives. Firstly, although local governments have heard that evacuees have no intention of returning to Fukushima, in reality, evacuees feel that if the environment is improved, I'd like to return, but I feel increased loneliness upon return. Of course, there has been an increase in loneliness, and this is the fact. And the second point, understand and communicate the evacuees' feelings clearly, expressing what can and cannot be done, always remain sincere. And third point, recognize that evacuees outside the prefecture feel a certain amount of guilt and communication that only reaffirms the situation in Fukushima does not adequately address their feelings. And the fourth point, while improving the environment is beyond our capacity, introduce other initiatives and offer help within our domain. And the fifth point, clearly communicate what can and cannot be done, and avoid an intentional statements that raise unnecessary expectations. So, I will now describe the natural cases of risk communication among Fukushima residents. Firstly, immediately after the accident, I get the impression that there were many questions and concerns about firing 4 points. Can I hang my clothes outside? Is tap water and well water safe to drink? I heard that the thyroid cancer is increasing among children in Fukushima Prefecture. And can I have my child in my hometown? In other words, many residents have similar questions, and these questions were often answered in lectures for dozens or to 100 people. And the booklet guideline for the living in Fukushima was created with this background in mind. The booklet guideline for the living in Fukushima was created with the back by the Ministry of Environment. This is a collection of a Q&A the ministry gathered in 2017 from experts working in Fukushima Prefecture, and compiled questions and other frequently asked questions recently. As explained earlier, the Ministry of Environment has established the Radiation Risk Communication Consultant Support Center to train personnel to practice risk communication. However, it is difficult to immediately explain the risks in the same way as the experts. So, we thought that by using this guide and going through it with the resident, it would be easier to explain and the risk communication would be facilitated. The contents are divided into 3 sections. First section is before returning to their hometown, and the second section is after returning to their hometown. And third section is for the future life in hometown, so that each section can be tailored to address the concerns and the anxiety of the residents. Afterwards, Ministry of Environment made additional version of this guideline in 2019 because the phase around the residents has been changed for 7 years. And it can be said that the residents who had relatively the same concerns immediately after the accident have become more knowledgeable about radiation over time, and their consultations have become more individualized and complex. For example, the following is a case in which we received the consultation 9 years after the accident. When I started living with a personal dosimeter, the estimated annual exposure dose was almost 5 millisieverts. I wondered if I could continue to live in my current home. Will I get sick if I don't? And I heard that wild edible vegetables contain a lot of radiation, so should I stop picking wild edible vegetables? And the Fukushima Prefecture has a Satoyama culture, so-called Satoyama culture, where people go into the hills or the mountains behind their houses to gather mushrooms and wild edible vegetables to eat. They have a culture of gathering wild edible vegetables in the spring and the mushrooms in the autumn. It is true that the mountains have not been decontaminated and are relatively easy to be exposed to radiation. However, there is also a health condition that comes from being in the mountains every day. It is important to compare the risk of exposure to radiation with the risk of damage to their physical and mental health, as well as to present the subject and explain the advantage and disadvantage of each, and risk communication is to dialogue and think together so that the subject can be spotted in making this choice. Here are some specific answers and ideas to the previous examples. The number 1 meter sievelt was especially probabilistic after the Fukushima accident. It can be said that the fact that this number was the only one featured often led to misconceptions. Therefore, in dialogue, the firing point needs to be communicated and interacted with. The emphasis on 1 meter sievelt in the government communications in the early stages of the accident led to perception of 1 meter sievelt as if it were the boundary between danger and safety. As a result, there was a widespread perception among the population that the radiation dose had to be less than 1 meter sievelt, even under the existing exposure conditions. It is a key point is how does he carry his personal radiation dosimeter? Does he keep it in the house? Does he wear it only when he is out of the house? And I talked about this at the end of the previous slides, the kinds of dialogue that asks about life situations and raise out options and information on the table. It is so important thing. And furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, it will be a big mistake to reject the culture of Fukushima solely in the context of radiation, and the loss of opportunities for exercise for the elderly people is extremely problematic for their physical and mental health. However, this does not mean that the risk of radiation should be ignored, and one way of thinking about this is, for example, to go into the mountains less frequently or for shorter periods of time. For example, one idea is to reduce the frequency of shorten the time one spends in the mountain. Also, measuring the radioactivity levels of wild edible vegetables and mushrooms can be used to assess and communicate the risk of internal exposure. In fact, for these residents, I support the firing. For wild edible vegetables and mushrooms, we suggest that the inspection be made at the food inspection station established in the city. People should wear personal dosimeters when they go to collect them. And based on the results, they will make a decision to eat or not to eat. And what is the health risk of exposure from eating and or collecting the food? What is the health risk or not going to the question? Present the different risks and leave the final decision to the subject. Now, I would also like to look at the risk communication for evacuees outside of Fukushima Prefecture. The background and ideas were explained in the previous slides, but the nature of migration is stronger for relatively young people. However, for the elderly people, some are considering returning from the evacuation sites to their original home in Fukushima as an option. However, there are 4 major problems which are introduced below. First point, deep-seated misconceptions about Fukushima and the environment surrounding Fukushima have emerged. And second point, many people have strong feelings about Fukushima and want to return despite their misconceptions. Third point, however, it is not only the misconceptions about Fukushima, but also the loneliness, isolation, and the misintegration of the community that they are having a major impact. And the fourth point, in some places, people are being evacuated from their original residential areas in groups, and the extent of communities and evacuation areas prevents the loneliness and the isolation. As for Fukushima, and the deep-seated misconceptions about the health effects of radiation. It is likely due to the fact that too little information has been disseminated. In Fukushima Prefecture, many experts came in and the correct information was given daily on TV or newspaper and the peer magazine, and little by little, residents were able to acquire knowledge about radiation. This is why, as I told you earlier, it has become individualized and complicated. However, outside of Fukushima Prefecture, such information does not reach them, and they are forced to accept misinformation found on the internet. If it has been 10 years since the accident, that misinformation has become entrenched. Many people still feel the same way about their hometowns, and the desire to return someday is present. However, the number of former residents who have returned to their hometown is extremely limited. And it is also true that some people cannot return even if they wanted to due to issues of loneliness, isolation, and living conditions. Therefore, I believe the following 3 points are important: radiation risk communication to out-of-prefecture evacuees. Communicate that living in an evacuation area is an option and that returning to their hometown is an also option. And we will respond to as professionals to dispel misconceptions about the health effects of radiation, but we will not impose them on them. Explain to them that returning to their hometown will bring loneliness and the loss comfort in their daily lives. And again, the final decision is not ours as experts, but that of each and every resident. So, of course, that decision will vary. It is important for us to provide enough information to contribute to that decision, not only the good as the risks, as risks are risks, but also the good and the bad. We then need to have a dialogue with them so that they can make a final decision and we can work together to help them have a better life. Finally, the lecture will summarize the lessons learned from the Fukushima nuclear accident and the future risk communication strategies and the conclusions. Risk communication has several phases, and its effect differs by phase. That it is necessary to plan and implement risk communication by considering the content based on the type of target and the purpose of the communication. After the nuclear disaster, radiation risk communication plays an important role in relieving those affected and reducing radiation health anxiety. In the wake of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, many people were anxious not only about the health effects of radiation, but also that of the whole person. And nuclear disasters are extremely rare, but it is hoped that risk communicators acquire the minimum knowledge necessary on radiation health effects due to their role. So, this is the last slide, and thank you for attention.
Okay, thank you, Professor Yamaguchi. Thank you for your very informative and I think very important topics in communication to public in emergency situation. Thank you so much. So we have enough time to have some questions from audience. If anyone, please raise your hand. So before I would like to ask a question. I think at that time we have not a smartphone and social media like today in 2011. So my question is how you manage the questions from public and satisfy them, or communication tools between them, between you and public.
Thank you for the questions. It is so difficult, the situations, rather than the situation of 2011. And social networking is obviously the spreading and the misperception is so it's bad rumors. So, but correct information is the one person and one voice is so important, and one person spread the correct information by one voice is so important, and this information is so this is the so important thing I think.
Okay, and I think social media, maybe the question is, it is useful or not useful in emergency situation, because we have some fake news or some incorrect scientific news in the social media, mainly in emergency situation like a nuclear disaster. Yeah.
Yeah, social media is so useful, I think. And in the situation of the 2011 disaster, Fukushima Daiichi, the social media and that is Twitter is so good and a useful platform for the people around the Japan. So it is a good point, but it is so difficult to control the information. It is so yeah, it is so difficult to control. Yeah, but it's so useful, I think.
Yeah, okay. We have a question in the chat box by Mr. John, student of nuclear energy in Kenyatta University. The question is, what are the biggest ongoing challenges in managing the aftermath of the Fukushima disaster? Are the public concern viable? And what future steps are planned for further enhance of nuclear safety and disaster? Yeah. Professor Kawana, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello again. So aftermath, and what is the biggest challenge is first question, as I understand it. So in the site within the territory of the Fukushima Daiichi, the first thing immediately after the accident, the biggest challenge immediately after the accident was to how to deal with contaminated water. Yes, so actually it started to release to the ocean at the beginning of the April, and we needed to stop it. So by having a lot of support, of course, not only within Japan, but also the support from the various countries, we tried to stop. So kind of the very special liquid, including the glass, because to stop the oceanside area. So that was the biggest biggest challenge at the time, I remember. And also yes, so that is a yes, that is the biggest challenge at the time. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, I have a question, Professor Kawana. What have you any at that time of the accident? Have you any special rules for export and imports of, for example, foods or some good to Japan, to other countries, or from outside to the Japan? Do you have some rules, special rules for exportation and importation of?
Yeah, probably the importing the food is no problem, but exporting the food might be the problem. But I'm sorry, I'm from the industry, and I'm not so familiar with such a rules. And the government decided to should decide, and of course, and there's some critical opinions. We received a lot of the criticisms to continuously export the foods and materials, anything from Japan. And it's not our decision. It's the other countries' decisions to receive the things from especially the food from Japan. So EU decided something, US decided something, and other countries also. So, and we are relatively the passive rather than the active at that time, I think.
Okay, thank you. And another question I have is about you mentioned that at that time you use car batteries
Yeah.
to power supply. How many car batteries you used for to solve the problem?
Yeah, how many? I don't remember the exact number, but anyway, we needed to create a 120 volt by connecting the each batteries. So we had 3 nuclear power main control rooms. So one for the unit 1 and 2, and the other one second and unit 3 and 4, and the third unit 5 and 6. So at least we brought the I'd say tens of the batteries from our car batteries. So I cannot count it. Yeah.
Thank you. And is there any question by audience? If not, I have another question from Mr. Takumi. It is my last question, actually.
Yes.
You mentioned about the importance of communication with public in emergency situation mainly, but is it important also for any kind of nuclear facilities or just for nuclear power plants? Can you classify the importance of communication with public residents?
Yeah. Of course, and not only the nuclear power plant, but also nuclear facility is so important with dialogue and with the residents and the facilities involved and the related institutions involved is so important to risk communication before the accident at the peacetime.
According to your experience, I think the quantity, those quantity, it is very important things that we can collaborate with public, with others, those level. How we can define or we can explain the concept of those for public. This is the key factors. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so case by case, and so case or of the municipalities or institutions. So it is different from the situation. It is so, but many people in Japan at the time of the accident in 2011, as most people received the 1 millisievert is limited. So, me and the other experts at the risk communication as the 1 millisievert is not the safe and danger line. It's not the safe and danger line. I talked about this to talk about this, but it is so different from the risk perceptions of the situation, I think. And raise the hand of the Mr. Kawanis.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Yes. So thank you. Please, Professor Kawano.
Not related to that discussion. May I talk a little bit about more about the aftermath of the accident? So I just mentioned only the contaminated water. Yes, that's a real challenges, but also, yeah, it's a long ago, 13 years ago, I started to remember several things. And at first, we needed to make the plants move to the cold shutdown status. It's technically make the temperature under the 100 degrees, not boiling level. So it took about 9 months to reach there. So of course, and we started from injection of the seawater, but we tried to restore the power supply and also the possibility of the supplying the cooling pure water. So then we finally did is the cold shutdown status and declare it in December in 2011. That was the first big achievement for us. And in parallel with that, we needed to find out how to deal with contaminated water, not just stopping the release of the ocean. So we especially had a strong support from the US DOE laboratories. They had a very various experience to deal with the contaminated water. So we installed a so-called ALPS system to treat that contaminated water. Of course, we still had a problem to how to store that contaminated water in the tanks. So that was the next challenge following that technology installment. So these two are the biggest challenges. And at that time, I remember.
Thank you for information. I think today social media is some challenge about contaminated water from Fukushima Daiichi accident right now, because I think so many news from Indian social media about that some experts try to satisfy public that this contaminated water is under control, but may we have also some challenges about this. Thank you. I think we have some question in the chat box. I think it is our last question because the time is finished. The question is, what about the health of emergency workers in Fukushima, and what was the maximum exposure?
Yes, several people who needed to go into the high radiation areas actually very much exposed to the radiation. So highest, I don't remember exactly, but some people had 600 millisievert exposure at that time. Fortunately, that people are still healthy and no problem, but actually it's really beyond the limit, of course. And continuously and periodically monitored his health conditions. That is the highest part, but several other people also had tens of millisievert exposures. So those people and also the lower level exposure people are also, including myself, are periodically allowed to have a health condition check arranged by the government.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Kawano and Professor Yamaguchi, for your participation and provide this useful information and lecture for us. And also, I would like to thank the agency and Mr. Maro to facilitate this online webinar. Before I close this session, I would like to share to audience about the next webinar that ANN will have, which is about the radiation in medicine, nuclear application in medicine. So, thank you so much, Mr. Mauro. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for accepting the board's presenters, Professor Akira Kawano and Dr. Takumi Yamaguchi from Tokyo Medical University. Very comprehensive and informative presentations. And if you were okay, please let me ask you both presenters to have the one comment, because you know the ANN platform to provide with some the place to share the nuclear science and the technology education. So there's lots of the member states who are willing to install not only the power plants but also some the radiation therapy facilities or some the nuclear application, the factory as well. So if you were if you had several opinions, please let me share with in the last session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Do you have any questions? I see you raising the hands.
Hello, this is Al Mamun.
Please.
Actually, I want to just share one thing. That is, it would be great if you provide the two presentation, whatever is presented here. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you mean you need the presentation files?
It would be a pleasure for me if you send those two presentations.
All any webinar can be available in the website. You can download it from the ANN website.
Okay, that's also good. Please share with me the.
Okay.
I mean, okay.
Thank you very much for the, by the way, thank you very much for the organizing, the facilitating here. Thank you very much for the both the presenters from the IAEA and the Tokyo Medical University. And we actually ANN and the IAEA and would like to collaborate in the future. Thank you very much for everyone for the attending here. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you very much.